What a wonderful, um, just a praise to the fact that just Montessori is this strong. As I listened to these beautiful children and watching them with the violin, I thought only in South Carolina. That can only happen here. We are creating the future of Montessori in America as well as around the world. We know that we have Montessori in so many different parts of the world. I was privileged to go to different parts in order to do accreditation for teacher training programs. This year in my own training program, I have such a diverse group of people that it just makes my heart sing. We have Muslims, we have African American, we have Mexican, we have Puerto Ricans. We have such a wonderful group that I think it just tells us that we are expanding out as Montessorians. And I feel privileged that I've been a part of it for so many years. But I'm coming to you today, and I hope you don't boo me, but I'm coming to you today with some questions. I've been in Montessori long enough to know that we're not perfect, and we are working hard at doing a better job. If not, why are we here? You see, why'd you give up a Saturday? And some of you gave up a Friday as well. But I'm going to ask some questions. And I wish I could tell you I have all the answers, but I don't. But I think we just have to start asking these questions out loud in our schools and in conferences like this so we can grow. One of the questions I wrote down here, should we be more directive? How important are individual or group presentations? What about consistency? Are the movements of the teacher important? Is order important? What about silence? Is walking on the line appropriate? How important is it to observe? Is it important to share what we observe with the rest of the staff? And last but not least, should fantasy play be a part of the Montessori environment? These are only a few. We're going to discuss some of these questions now. I've been asking myself these questions for years because, you see, 4 out of every 5 days during the school year, I'm sitting in classrooms observing student teachers. I think it was last year I did 133 visits. Now I hired someone to help me now because it's just, I'm in my 70s and I think, I don't know how much longer I could do this. And it's not the sitting there, that's a joy. It's the getting there and back. It's 2 hours on the road to sit for 2 hours and then 2 hours back. Having questions keeps us alive, and it's significantly more important than having answers. We all want good things for children. That's why we're here. We have given years of our lives, or we just started to make this world a better place for children. And unknowingly, we may be hindering this very work. It's interesting to look at history and see the timeline of what we believed about children. I realized right before this talk that I had to take an hour talk and move it into a half an hour, so I'm not going to go through the whole timeline. But what happens, I found very interesting as I was reading historically, I found out that sometimes what people said in one era, the next era just changed it. Now, those are older people. There was a time when whole language was real important. We didn't call it that. And then phonics, and then back to whole language. That's just one example. In one era, we were told not to ever hug or kiss a child. That was John Watson. And then along came Spock, who says, we have to hug and touch children. So that's been the history in education. We've got to get it together. But as I read this research, I realized that throughout all these changes, Montessori's ideas and philosophy were at the forefront. They were still right. It's just that we have to believe in them, right? Because people look at us and say, you're doing what? Is that a disease? Or is that for very bright children? Or is that for very poor children? People do not understand. But in South Carolina, they must. I mean, I cannot tell you how excited I am about the public schools. Now, there are like 300 or 400, maybe it's not 400 yet, 350 public schools around this nation that have Montessori. And praise God, may it continue. Now we have to get them to be independent, not have to be hindered by no left child left behind. Now, don't get me started on that one. Now, what will be our focus in our third millennium? Have we as child caregivers, moved on with new ideas to the detriment of the child? Or have we not moved at all? A very wise gentleman talked to me last night after my talk, and he said, here's what he hears. Now, he's an outsider looking in to Montessori, and he hears one Montessori teacher saying to another, but that's not Montessori, what you're doing. Do you know, Montessori said, follow the child. We've got to change with the times, good changes. We have to stay true to our roots, and that's what this is all about. Let's create the future of Montessori in such a way that we'll be proud to embrace this work that we're doing for children. I once heard Nancy McCormick Rambush. Years ago, wasn't a Montessorian yet. She was speaking in the next, at a Montessori school near where I was teaching 66 first graders. And I went to her talk, and she said, let's not remain in Montessori's shadow, but let's get up on her shoulders and go forward. That's the whole idea. I'm not saying that change should not occur. I'm saying that in change there's a possibility we'll lose the spirit. That's a loss the movement cannot absorb. Our roots are very rich. If we go back to Dr. Montessori's words, in preparation for this talk, I did just that. I took off my books that were on my shelf for my students, and I started rereading, and I'd get so excited about it. Because here I am, again, these words are saying to me, you're on the right track. And they're words from such a long time ago. In fact, I've decided that I am going to, and I've been already in the process of rereading her books and changing my notes for teaching, as I teach around the country in Montessori teacher training programs. But before I go into the new research, let's revisit our roots. I'm more aware that many of us are losing this spirit. Let's consider the following points. Free choice. Are we slowly taking this away from children? Do we sit back and say, oh, but this 3-year-old is not making wise choices? Did you make wise choices when you were 3 years old? Even teenagers. I mean, I was a teenager, and I made some unwise choices. I went back to my 50th reunion recently, and they reminded me of what I was like. One of the gentlemen said, when you entered the convent, I thought, oh, if she stays, I'll eat my Bible. Are we slowly taking free choice away from children? Please examine yourself in this. Montessori said in The Absorbent Mind, it's clear that the capacity for free choice is a strengthening exercise. She says that in the Secret of Childhood, she said one of the most interesting and unexpected discoveries in our schools was the love and diligence with which children who acted on their own carried out their tasks. A child who is free to act not only seeks to gather sensible impressions from his environment, but he also shows a love for exactitude in the carrying out of his action. His spirit then seems to be suspended. I love the way she wrote. Between existence and self-realization. She says the child is the discoverer. He's a splendid being in search of his own form. Isn't that nice? Are we slowly becoming more directive, or worse, excessively directive? And I mean this in elementary as well as preschool. I was in a toddler room recently, and they were directing these babes. I thought they really don't have